We're going to wrap up a series that we started a few weeks ago. It's simply called Move Forward, and we've been talking about, as we begin a brand new year, what steps can we take that will actually move us forward in life? And we've looked at a lot of different things. And so today, as we wrap this up, I want to start with a question. How many of you have ever made a bad decision? Now, don't raise your hands yet. We haven't done this in a while, but I think it is good for the soul. Every once in a while, you need a little soul cleanse. So we're going to do kind of a mass confession in just a few moments. I'm going to ask you to raise your hands if you've ever made a foolish decision of any kind, whether it's financially or vocationally, if you've ever messed up when it comes to your physical health or your spiritual health, if you've ever said something that you desperately wish you had not said, if you've ever made a foolish relational choice or romantic selection, if you've ever made a less than insightful decision about time management or goal setting in your life, if there's a parenting moment that you're like, I wish I hadn't done that, if your television viewing has gotten sideways, right? And you've been more focused on T-Swizzle than you have football, right? Come on, is that too personal? It's too personal? Okay, not yet, not yet. If you've ever made a decision that with the benefit of hindsight could have been characterized, at least for me, by the word dumb, could you just raise your hand right now and let's just be honest with one another? Yeah, look, we are in great company. I love it. Here's the deal. You and I, we make decisions, and then those decisions, some of them ultimately end up making us, right? What I say and what I think, what I choose to eat, what I read, the places that I go, who I'm with, what I choose to do with my time, how I work at my job, how I make a decision to rest or not rest. Those add up a million little decisions that you and I make every single day. And in the end, what you get is a life. And the Bible, as we've been learning, has a word for people who navigate life really well, and that word is wise. Not lucky, not wealthy, not successful, not really smart, but wise. And as we have learned over these past few weeks, wisdom is not about intelligence. It's not about the number of degrees that you and I can acquire over the course of our lifetime. In the scriptures, wisdom is simply the ability to make right decisions. Wisdom is learning to live really well. It's the ability to find God in ordinary moments of everyday life. And as we have said from the very beginning, it is important to understand that Proverbs are not promises. When you read a proverb, it's not a promise for God, it is a principle from God. And a principle says, this is true most of the time. It's maybe not always true, but most of the time, if you live your life the way that the Proverbs are instructing us, it will prove to be true. It is a pathway to save you and I from a lot of pain and a lot of heartache. It doesn't mean it's going to be true 100% of the time, every single time, but most of the time. And so Proverbs is more about learning to lean into and to listen so that over the course of our life, we can gain a sense of wisdom. Because as we've acknowledged, God's word actually has a lot to say about how you and I manage our money, or how we navigate conflict when it comes into our life. It's got things to say about how we deal with our work. It's such a huge chunk of your life and my life. There's actually some really good principles that we can build into that. It's got stuff to say about how you answer someone who accuses you, or how you handle someone who's wronged you, and how you conduct yourself in your everyday life. And I think about all the things that Proverbs offers us, like things about like growth, right? Proverbs 2, verse 2 says, turn your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. Search for them as you would for silver. Seek them like hidden treasures. Then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord, and you will gain the knowledge of God. That's a very practical principle that you and I can build into our life. We can make the decision right now that, you know what, I'm gonna grow. Because the pursuit of growth always leads to maturity. And maturation prepares us for life's tests. See, whether we like it or not, you and I are actually created to be students. I don't know how often you think about that. We were hardwired to learn. There's something inside every human being. We need to stretch. We need to be challenged. We need to actually grow. We were never created to be the teacher because we already have one. It's God. God is the greatest teacher ever. And a big part of what God is doing is teaching. He's using our relationships and our talents, using the abilities that we've been given, our hopes, our fears, our circumstances, the situations that you and I sometimes find ourselves in. All of that God is using to prepare us for the test. And if we will pay attention to the teacher and the teaching, when we face the exam, we'll be able to pass it with flying colors. Because the truth of the matter is, the test is going to come in your life and my life. Being a Christian or being a follower of Jesus, as we've said a lot, it does not come with a cosmic insurance policy. It does not come with a guarantee or a promise that we're never going to be pushed and we're never going to be prodded and we're never going to be tested. But what it does mean is that if you and I are willing, and if we will let him, God will get us coached up so that when we face that test, it will not throw us sideways. You got to be willing to grow. Another thing the book of Proverbs talks a lot about is trust. The very first proverb we looked at in this series is Proverbs 3, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Then you will have healing for your body and strength for your bones. It's good stuff. And what the writer is saying is, just trust God to be God. You don't have to try to be God in your own life. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to compete with some standard that somebody else sets for your life. What it's saying is just learn to trust God. Let your life be God-driven and not culture-driven. Wisdom tells us that if we're married, we've got to guard our love for one another. We got to value that relationship. You got to talk about it with each other on a regular basis. You shouldn't be afraid to evaluate it, to actually learn from each other, to fight for it when you have to fight for it, and to learn to do conflict really, really well. There's some great principles in this book that will teach us about marriage. Think about words. Proverbs 18:21, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. It's powerful, man. The tongue, the words that you and I choose, will bring death or life. Think about how powerful that could be the next time you interact with your son or daughter. And maybe they're sideways. And maybe they're doing something you don't like. What if your first thought was, I need to breathe. I can't control what they're doing, but I'm gonna take a breath and I'm gonna remember that what I speak is either gonna speak life or it's gonna speak death. Think about in your marriage. Think about at your job, right? Think about when you're standing in line somewhere, you're sitting in traffic, right? How you choose to interact with other human beings is either gonna bring death or it's gonna bring life. Proverbs also talks about commitment. And this is a really important one. Am I being wise with the greatest commitment I'm ever going to make in my life? Again, Proverbs verse 3, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all that you do, and he will show you the path to take. It's wisdom. It's not trusting yourself and your own opinion. It's leaning in and trying to figure out, well, what is God trying to show me? What principles can I build into my life that will bring the freedom that I'm looking for? And here's the thing about freedom and about wisdom. Wisdom is fantastic. Wisdom makes for better friends. It will make for better character. It will help us build better lives. It will help us have better financial management. We'll be better workers. We'll be better citizens. We can create a better nation. We'll be better parents. But here's the deal. Wise people still get cancer. And wise people still get betrayed. And wise people still often make mistakes. It's wise people who still get knocked down. They still fail. Wise people, just like everybody else, still end up dying. See, making good decisions is only going to get you and I so far. And so what we've been talking about over these last few weeks, it's not about learning to be a better person. It's not about learning to be a better spouse or a better friend or a better anything. It's about learning how to seek God's heart. And at the core of God's heart is Jesus. It was Paul who said in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, the message of the cross is foolish to those who are headed for destruction. But we who are being saved know it is the very power of God. See, this whole discussion that we've been having since the beginning of the year, it's all driven by the idea that we gain wisdom not just for wisdom's sake, but because it will drive us deeper in our relationship with Jesus. And as we're driven more and more toward Jesus, we'll discover true life. And that true life only comes from a heart that has been transformed by God's grace. Which is why we want to end with grow your faith. Learn to move forward in your faith. Let me put it like this. 22 days after you and I were conceived, the very first miracle of our life happened. On that 22nd day, a tiny electrical impulse stimulated your heart muscle, and it contracted for the very first time. It's called an arterial kick, and blood was forced into your ventricles. And that moment was so faint that it could not be detected, even with amplification. But in fact, that was the first heartbeat of your life and my life. And it has never stopped beating since. From that day to this one. 70 milliliters of blood with every contraction. 14,000 pints being pumped every day. 100,000 beats of your heart every single day. Maybe your heart skipped a beat once in your life. When you saw that person that you're sitting next to for the first time, and maybe right now you just want to kind of slide your hand over and just kind of squeeze their hand and tell them, I'm so thankful you're in my life. Maybe today when you got to church, you looked down your aisle and you saw somebody for the first time and your heart skipped a beat. Don't reach over and squeeze their hand right now, right? Do that on your own time. But God gave us these amazing gifts called our hearts. They are our physical hearts. And part of what is amazing about them is you cannot make your heart beat on your own. I don't know if you've ever forgotten where your keys are, or where you parked your car. Maybe you forgot an important meeting, and maybe in the throes of things, you even forgot where you left your kids. Imagine if your heart and my heart only beat when we actually thought about it and when we remembered to cause it to beat. We'd be in serious trouble, right? God created our hearts so that that beat goes on whether we're aware of it or not. It is truly a gift from God. Now, God did not just give us a physical heart, God also gave us a spiritual heart. There is an inner you and there is an inner me. And that's the part of us that chooses and devotes and makes commitments. It's that part of us that wills us to either move forward or to stay stagnant. And the truth is, no matter how well you take care of it, your physical heart is going to wear out someday. It is going to stop beating sooner or later. And the number of beats that we have left is a finite number. I know you're probably thinking, man, I'm really glad I came to church today. That was great. But it's true. The day will come when every physical heart stops beating and our life on this planet will stop. But your spiritual heart, the core of who you are, that is going to go on forever. It is our spiritual heart that will beat throughout eternity. And that's why the writer of the book of Proverbs says, above all else, guard your heart, for it affects everything you do. Above all else, guard your heart. So what the writer is saying is don't worry so much about how you're doing in terms of your security or your health or your physical or material well-being. All of that stuff has its place. But above all of that, Your first priority, your top priority is guard your heart. Take care of your heart, because out of your heart flows all of your life. So the question that we're challenged to wrestle with is, what is the condition of my heart? Like my spiritual heart. What's the condition of my heart toward God? And what is the condition of my heart toward other people? See, that's what this series is really about. Because I think it is possible to live a life completely deceived about what's really going on the inside. There's a fascinating parallel between the physical heart and the spiritual heart. This is from a research cardiologist named Hardwin Mead. He writes, "We see people come in all the time who look perfectly healthy. You wouldn't know there was anything wrong with their heart. Simple tests can be done. We can listen to the heart. We can even do an EKG and things will still look fine. But put a person under stress, and now we see if there's something wrong. Something maybe even life-threatening. Put a person under stress." He says, if we hadn't put that person under stress, we might never have found the problem, and there could have been dire consequences. But if caught in time, we can actually correct the problem. They can go on and live a healthy life. If we examine their life when they're under stress, it can change everything. Now, I think that is true with our physical hearts. But I think it is also true for our spiritual hearts. Like, we can gather together on a day like today and we can feel the emotion of the moment and we can convince ourselves, well, I must be walking really closely with God. We can sing a song together and maybe there's something about that song that just sort of pulls at my heartstrings and I can convince myself, well, I must be really walking closely with God. But put yourself under a little stress. A diagnosis you didn't see coming, or a strain in a relationship that you maybe weren't anticipating. Let something happen to one of your kids or at work or in your financial life, and then you'll feel the stress and you can figure out, well, how is my heart really doing in all honesty? Like, how am I connected with God? See, make no mistake about it, y'all. That's why we talk about next steps all the time. You can't just assume that everything is okay. You can claim God's grace, you can claim the salvation that you find in Jesus, but then the rest of your life has to be, I gotta move forward. I can't stay where I am. I gotta keep taking my next steps, and I don't know what that next step for you is. There are easy ways to stretch your faith, and it's the common stuff that if you've been around the church, you've heard it your whole life. Just like with your physical hearts, diet, exercise, regular checkups, deal with bad habits. When it comes to your spiritual life, it's taking time to pray. It's coming to worship on a regular basis and letting yourself go. It's joining our daily Bible reading or going to a Bible study. It's stepping out of your comfort zone into some area of service. It's investing in a small group of people, beginning to establish relationships so that you're surrounded by people who can help you move forward in life. But it takes effort. And it takes commitment, and it won't happen by osmosis. That's why I like this time of year. Beginning on Wednesday, we'll kick off the season of Lent. And I know we had some fun with that, and I realize it is Valentine's Day, but it's a powerful night, y'all, where we gather from all campuses. And we start this process of 40 days, from Wednesday all the way to Easter Sunday. It's a time when we're called to self-reflection and self-assessment, where we're challenged to actually move forward in our faith, to ask God for 40 straight days, just wash your spirit over my soul. Show me those areas where I need to change. Show me the areas where I'm wrong. I want to grow closer to you. It's a time when we seek God's heart and we lean into his grace. And so if you're here today and you're thinking to yourself, man, if I'm honest with myself, I'm the same person today that I was 20 years ago, and something's got to change. Show up Wednesday night. It's not magic, but it's an opportunity for you and I to do what I think God is asking us to do, to just open ourselves up as best we can to the movement of God's Spirit and allow God to do the work that God needs to do so that we'll be the people that God needs us to be. Y'all, the church is called to be a light to shine in the darkness. And when you look back over the 60 years of history of Cokesbury Church, you can see moments as clear as day where that light shone bright. It started with 12 or 13 couples that came all the way from East Knoxville out to the farm country of, wasn't even West Knoxville, and there was just a piece of land, and they built a house, and they started a church. And you can go all the way through the last 60 years, and you can see those moments where people took it serious. That was a part of their calling. They stepped forward in faith. You guys are doing the exact same thing. It is a powerful legacy. And we have impacted thousands and thousands of lives. But the challenge is there's still thousands and thousands of more lives. There are people that you and I may never even have an opportunity to meet in our lifetime whose life is going to be changed because they showed up at this place called Cokesbury, and be able to trace it back and to see the lineage of people who are doing their best to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, to just grow their faith, to keep taking next steps, and to keep trusting God to bring the change. And what I've experienced is it does it. It just happens. My life has changed because of people who are willing to shine the light of Jesus on me. My kids' lives were forever changed because people in this church were willing to shine a light into their life. And they now have taken their place, and they're doing the best they can to shine the light. And so today, as we close out our service, I just want to challenge you to think about what is that next step. What is that next step of faith that God is asking you to take? For some, it'll be baptism. You've never been baptized before, and we believe that is your next step after you've said yes to Jesus. For some of us, it'll be, hey, I need to join the church, right? Like I've been kicking the tires 10, 15 years. Maybe it's time to make it official. For some of us, it may be as simple as opening up your app and becoming a part of the daily Bible reading, right? Like, maybe it's finding some area of service. Maybe it's something deeper, like sending a text to somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe that next step is just finding that person and saying, hey, you know what, I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I don't know what your next step is, but I know if you're drawing air in your lungs, we've all got one. And so I want you to know the altars for our church are always open. I know it's been kind of a wild 5 or 6 weeks to start this new year. And I would never pretend to know everything that you guys are dealing with, but I want you to know that whatever it is that you're carrying with you, you can start that process of moving forward, and it happens right here. It's when you and I bend a knee and bow a head, and we bring that to God. God can't help but intervene. And I know it's a big ask in a room full of people to say, man, you really want me to get out of my seat? Well, we're going to stand and sing, and that'll make it a little bit easier. And if that's too much for you, you can make an altar right where you are right now. Nobody's even got to know what's going on. This is a moment for you to catch your breath, to stand in the presence of a holy and just God, and to claim His grace for your life. If by chance you're here today and you've never begun a relationship with Jesus, it's really simple. Guys like me make it incredibly complicated, but I believe it is just as simple as saying, God, come into my life. That's it. It's just Jesus, come into my life. There may be a million things that you need to say to God. You got the whole rest of your life to have that conversation. But I don't know of a better day than today to take that first step. And so if that's you, I want you to know this is your opportunity, and I hope you take it. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.